Welcome back from lunch, everybody. So we resume with our afternoon session, starting with Rob Pickering, longtime hacker, creator of a lot of things, and his topic, which is GPT. Will GPT rescue machine voice interfaces? That's a hot topic right now. So I'm very curious about it. Thank you so much, and well, take it away.
I get the slides up. So the official title of the talk today is "Will GPT Rescue Machine Voice Interfaces?" which is a bit kind of Enterprise Connect, isn't it, or something? Actually, what I really want to talk about is, should we put LLMs on the phone at all? Are they a hallucinating waste of time, useful tool, or danger to humanity? I'm really, really bad at talking to PowerPoint slides, so this session is going to be quite interactive. I'm just warning you now. So if you've got ideas about what you would like AI not to do, then we might be able to do some fun things. Let me talk a little bit about myself, what I've done, and how I arrive here talking about conversational AIs. So I've been an internet hacker, coder, network builder for many, many years, as you can tell from the greyness of my beard. I worked in the SIP voice industry, founded a company called IP Cortex doing an IP PBX soft switch. Worked in that company for a long time until 2019 and did quite a few things on the periphery. I think I was one of those people that was here at ComCom in 2018 and 2019, bringing some things to ComCon then. Thoroughly enjoyed it, so I thought I would come back and do a talk about what I've been doing since. So what I've really been doing since 2019, after I sold IP Cortex and left, I decided to go live in the hills in the Lake District because what I really enjoy is kayaking and walking up hills. And I figured I'll just, go and walk up some hills and stuff. As you can tell from my physique, that didn't work out terribly well. So, kind of what really happened at the start of 2020 with the pandemic got me thinking a little bit more about machine voice interfaces. And that seems a very weird thing to end up with, but I ended up getting back into coding some stuff around custom dialogue design. And the sort of the reason that I did that was that right at the start of the whole pandemic thing, certainly where we were, there were a lot of organizations that were scaling up to do things like home deliveries, pubs doing telephoners and pick up beer and all of that kind of stuff towards the latter phases. And one of the things that they were all struggling with was putting people on the end of the phone. Now, one part of the industry was going off and deploying SIP soft phones to all these folks working at home, but another part of it was about putting machine agents on the phone. So I got together with an organization I've been working with for a little while called Founders and Coders, who were struggling to place some of their junior software engineers, and we developed this app. And the idea behind the app really was to let an SME be able to craft a machine voice agent, where an SME, small charity, can put a machine voice agent that allows people to do more than just juggle voicemail. And I thought I had a really nice take on this, that stuff like Google's Dialogflow was just really complicated, and that if I could just give SMEs a nice interface on that, they'd be able to craft these fantastic agents that did wonderful things. I mean, it was a nice model. We just made it really simple, so we got simple UI to actually build the agent up. So it's nothing more really than an intelligent answering machine, and then we back-ended it into a Google Sheet. So that you would just come in, you would find a Google Sheet, recording attachments on there, because particularly if you were dealing with vulnerable folks, you needed to have the whole conversation sitting in there. So it's kind of more like an annotated answering machine that went forward into a Google Sheet. And we did stuff like
add
this.
A greeting we thought that lets callers know where they've landed, and then start naming requests. Now, requests are basically intents, but we don't use language like intent or entity because that's not something an SME trying to build an interface knows about. So we're just going to call the request book a delivery, and then they're asked to type in the kind of things that a customer might say to them when they want to fulfill that kind of request. And then within the request, obviously, folks that understand conversational interfaces, we've got entities. We don't call them that. we call them details. So those variant things that can occur in a request or an intent. And we can either use system entities for things that we know about, like phone number.
Okay, I'm not going to bore you with more of that, but as you can see, you end up with quite complex training videos that tell people how to construct this stuff. This was possibly the worst thing I've ever invented in my life. Because we built it at scale, because we figured, yeah, this is going to really fly, and loads of people want to use this. Got great big Kubernetes clusters, and, we did it from scratch. I think we're using Asterisk effectively with some modules down the road to interface with dialog flow, and built this great big thing. And we thought, this is great, we'll be able to sell it to SMEs for like 15 quid a month or something. This will be absolutely fantastic. It took about 5 or 6 hours to onboard somebody with this, and you end up writing the prompts yourself. And indeed, while you were doing it, thinking, why am I using this brain damage cut down interface when I could just do it in Dialogflow? So yeah, the whole thing was not great, and I decided to stop really doing anything with AI voice interfaces at that point. I've been playing with GPT really from the early days, playing around with it, and did some awesome things, but never really sort of saw the potential there. But looking at what's occurred, particularly with GPT-3, and its ability to follow conversations and instructions early in the year, I thought, well, actually, with its instruction following, if we can get an SME just to hand their process doc off, perhaps, I can actually go and revisit this product and do something with it. So I started playing in anger with GPT. All of the rest of this session, right, is just going to be about really kind of sharing that learning and doing a bit of it. So it's going to get quite interactive. I'm going to talk about this test bench. It's nothing more than a test bench at the moment. And you're going to get to use that test bench to try out building some agents. So let's give it a go, shall we? Then give it a go. This is how I built it. Built this thing called LLM Agent. There's a repo. It's Barclay license. You can go use and play with it. It talks to Jambones. Jambones obviously takes call from the SIP carrier. Jambones uses its own speech to text, text to speech via the Google engine. That's the one we chose to use. So what effectively happens is that Jambones hands text over that's come from the user to the LLM agent, and then it sends that into OpenAI for completions. The OpenAI product that I chose to use for this actually was GPT 3.5 Turbo, because it has a chat mode which is quite light and inexpensive. It's actually pretty good at chat, and it's quick. GPT-4 is actually quite slow and expensive for actually delivering responses. That's the repo for it. Then I added Google Palm 2, which is the Bard interface. So you kind of get a choice of the agent to play with. So let's give this a go and see it actually working. So let's do a quick reload on this. Choose a model. I'm going to do GPT 3.5 as the first model. This is a really simple intent, which is the kind of, or simple prompt, which is the default prompt. Temperature allows us to basically decide how creative we're going to allow the AI engine to be in its completions. 0.2 means it's allowed to add a bit of variance. It's allowed to use some of the mainstream but top-end completions. Temperature down to 0 just means, be very deterministic, and it'll just parrot the prompt back. Temperature up to 1. This is temperature on OpenAI now goes up to 2. They changed the limit a while ago, but basically we multiply by 2 on this interface. So create an agent. All that does is goes, talks to Jambones, grabs a telephone number that doesn't already have an agent associated with it, associates it with this AI, and gives us a phone number that we can play with. So if I call that number now.
Hello and welcome to Blackco user service. How may I assist you today?
Yeah, I think I'd like to order some flags, please.
Certainly. We sell flags, not flakes. Would you like to place an order for a flag?
Yeah, I think I'd actually like about 120 flags. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Which country flags would you like to order and in what sizes and materials? We have flags for the UK, US, and Taiwan, and they come in 50 centimeters, 1 meter, and 5 meter sizes, and in either nylon or canvas material.
Actually, you know what? Could you just send me a real mix of every flag and size that you do?
Sure. We can definitely do that for you. Just to confirm, you would like a mix of UK, US, and Taiwan flags in all sizes, 50 centimeters, 1 meter, and 5 meters, and both nylon and canvas materials. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, but I want to keep the cost down a little bit. So can you make most of the flags 50 centimetre and just a couple of, say, 1 and 5 metre out of each country and type? Can you tell me how much that would cost, please?
Certainly. Based on your order of 120 flags, the breakdown of the cost is as follows. 90 flags, 75% of the order, in 50 centimeters size, costing £7.50 each, £675. 18 flags, 15% of the order, in 1 meter size, costing £12 each, £216. 12 flags,
I really shouldn't have
10%
done
of
this,
the
should
order,
I? This is
in
going to
5
take a
meter
real
size,
while.
costing
But I want to
£40
let it
each,
go on because there's some good stuff
£480.
comes after this.
The total cost of the flags comes to £1,371. With the volume discount of 5% for orders of 10 to 19 flags, the discount amount is £33.75. Therefore, the total cost of the flags with the discount is £1,337.25. The flat shipping cost for your order is £9.99, and since you did not mention any of the postcodes that require an additional shipping cost of £25, the total shipping cost is £9.99. Adding the VAT of 20% to the total cost of the flags and shipping, the final cost of your order comes to £1,647.90. Does that all sound good to you?
Yeah, that all sounds great, thanks. Can I place that order, please? It's probably timed out the whole prompt because I made it so large. But, I mean, as you can... Oh, actually, my cord dropped. As you can see, I mean, that prompt isn't particularly big, right? You know, an organization can produce a document that size that says what they do. If I'd actually gone on to give it my postcode and I give it a Belfast postcode or something, it tells me it's an extra 25 quid shipping, and then emits a data line that I turn into some JSON, and the JSON comes back, and we get an order out of it. So, you know, actually, compared to sitting there, can you imagine the amount of knifing and forking of intents that would have to do with dialog flow to get to that point? I'm a bit of a convert now, actually. I think there's some good stuff that we can do with this. Can I just take a straw poll in the audience, actually? How many of you have got smart devices or use voice interfaces like Siri, Lex, all of that sort of stuff? Okay. How many of you use them once a day at least? Okay. How many of you use them once an hour, say, when you're at home? Okay. Of the folks that put their hand down early on in that process, what's the thing that most puts you off using those voice interfaces?
The responses aren't good enough yet for me. I mean, I'm talking about Google Home stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that was the view when I first started looking at this stuff in 2018, 2019, and looking at the dialog flow interfaces. It's just so expensive and complicated to produce a good agent. It's really, really quite expensive to do that. I kind of stuck something in the element chat yesterday when we first, when I first arrived, saying, if you want to bring some interesting ideas to this session, we can try and implement some of them. So, anyone want to do that with a laptop? Want to have a play with this? It is actually an application that works. So if you go to llm.aflisa.com, it'll land you on a dashboard, exactly the same thing that I just demoed, that will allow you to type a prompt in and get a voice agent that you can phone into. So if anyone's got any cool ideas they want to have a play with right now, I'd be quite interested to give you 5 or 10 minutes. We've got a bit of time to do that, to have a play with it. On the other hand, if people just want me to plow on about all the legal and complicated technical stuff, I'm more than happy to do that. So you guys choose. You want to have a play with it now, see what we can do? I've only got about 20 DDIs pointing in there, so you might have to play in small groups around it.
So in terms of the prompt, you just need to explain to it, you write verbatim
Yeah.
what you want to do.
Yeah. So the question was, in terms of the prompts, do you just write verbose text and tell it you want to do it? Yeah, by and large. There's a bit of trial and error involved, for sure.
So if I tell you my slightly evil idea. You remember Lenny? Mm-hmm. I want to build a bot that I can just dump scam callers onto,
Yep.
and it'll just waste their time.
Yep.
So the opposite, use it back at them. I figure that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how we explain to it to GPT. You are, almost want to give it a persona. Like, you are a little old lady. You know, like the scam betas you see on YouTube.
Yep.
I just figured, can we create a AI version of a scam beta?
Yeah, I mean, there are some guardrails, actually, particularly in OpenAI,
It won't.
where it will refuse to impersonate people and do evil stuff. Less so in
But I want to actually create a fake victim. I don't want to create a fake scammer. I want to create a victim to waste a fake victim to waste the scammer's time.
Okay,
so
give
that
it a go
should
then.
be,
Should we do it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to do it up here, or do you want to do it?
Well, I've got writer's block now on. So this is the thing for me. Like, as a geek, I'm kind of like, okay, those tedious interfaces are fine, but I'm pre-filled forms. What I'm struggling with is that blank page.
Yeah.
Enter prompt. I'm looking at the cursor now and like, okay, yeah. Starting with I can't think how to get started with the training data for it.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let me give it a go, and I will just try and think of something on the fly here. So let's disconnect this agent. I've never done this before, but we'll give it a go. Yes, thank you very much. Combination of rubbish typing and a dying keyboard. Who knows? I mean, that is the other thing that it's quite good at. Okay. And actually, what I'll do, I'll push the temperature right up to allow it to get really, really creative. We may be delivering a text.
That's what we need. We need a scammer, don't we? Yeah. generated the whole script.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that is that's one of the problems, actually, of trying to, because they're using a generic completion engine, these generative AIs are basically autocomplete on ACID. So what they're effectively doing is they're looking at the highest probability next token, basically, in text they generate. And it's quite a big job to effectively persuade them to do conversations in turn. But I'm quite sure if we played with that, Sam, if we sit down for half an hour tonight, I reckon we can quite easily produce something that encourages it to do. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't that be fun? I mean, that does neatly bring me on to what the rest of the presentation was going to be about, which was AI ethics, right? Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, sadly, that last example didn't entirely show us the best possible view on AI, but there are some problems. So this approach does work, and it does allow you to do some really quite kind of breathtakingly interesting stuff that you would try really, really hard to do by sitting there in dialog flow. But there are some sort of significant problems around it. One of them is hallucination, which is basically this kind of unintended output because the model is random and generative. We haven't actually implemented it yet because they only dropped it late last week, but OpenAI have just revved the GPT 3.5 engine. So the way that their API works, you give it a context at the start of the conversation, a so-called system context, which is that piece of prompt. And that prompt is supposed to be special, so it kind of acts as a guardrail for the rest of the conversation. And one of the kind of criticisms of 3.5 Turbo initially was that it didn't really guardrail the system prompt very well. So it didn't, you could happily make it jump out of the system prompt, and it wouldn't regard that as a particularly strong input. So all of a sudden it would be off in a tangential direction. They have announced that they have improved the system prompt following, or the system context following in 3.5. I've not had a chance to play with that yet, because the last 3 or 4 days I was just sort of putting together the stuff that I've been doing with the React front end on it. But effectively, we can control those hallucinations, and there are multiple ways of doing it. The API calls that we're using in here, and if you go and look at the source code to LLM agent, I should have left it up somewhere at the top of the slide, but I'll pop it back up later. Effectively, we're using GPT in a mode where we just say, give us the highest probability response that you've got there. If you're prepared to programmatically put guardrails and ask it for a set of responses, okay, it costs a bit more, but get a whole bunch of responses back and then enforce your own guardrails on the responses. You kind of need to do that anyway for all sorts of other reasons. So you can kind of reduce the hallucination problem. But it is a significant problem. And you know, when I was playing with the kind of the Flagco example, it will occasionally go off-piste and just make up policies that your company simply doesn't have, that you're not given it in the prompt, you know, like, I don't know, there's a 5-year warranty on our flags or something like that, that you know, is just, I didn't tell you that. And the reason it will do that, again, is it's a probability engine. It's generatively working on stuff it's seen on the internet. It's seen a document on the internet that looks like my description of what our company does and what our T's and C's are. It will happily do a completion from that. There is fine-tuning that you can do on models to reduce that. But, you know, I liken it actually to, it's not wildly different to putting a junior member of staff on a phone line. We don't tend to do that anymore because what we do is script people into the ground. So we're kind of treating people like human dialogue flows rather than human GPTs. But there's definitely a kind of a real possibility of that. So you do need some kind of guardrails around it. Another big problem there, actually, unfortunately we've lost the history, but very poor speech to text is just, where the whole world is at the moment. And part of the reason for that is, first of all, 8 kilohertz A-law, chucking it into the Google engine, it's not very good for the quality and resolution of speech. It's not bad, but getting things like names. Speech to text is improved massively from context. The reason that you can hear what I'm saying, despite the fact my accent's a bit weird and a bit different probably to what you're familiar with, is from the context that I'm standing at a podium and I'm talking about technical things. So when I say GPT, that's obvious I'm talking about that rather than the Grand Prix or something. And the model that we're using here, the flow here of using Google speech to text, taking that as text, throwing it into a text-based engine, getting the text results back, and putting it into a speech-to-text engine, putting it into a text-to-speech engine, throws away all of that context. GPT have got a whisper engine, which is their own speech-to-text or their own recognition engine. And I think once you start putting the two things together, so that you're putting the generative AI, so it's doing completions of voice rather than completions of text input, where the text result is a fallout, I think that gets more interesting. So I think one of the areas that could give us a significant improvement here is using the same engine to give us context rather than these completely separate things. I mean, actually, the generative AI is really good at papering over the cracks. So, you take the kind of rubbish speech to text where, when I think I did one earlier where I said I want some flakes, and it's sort of, no, you actually mean flags, because I'm, my context here is that I'm a flag engine. But that would be so much better if we're able to do the speech recognition within the context of what's going on in the context of the conversation. Privacy is another huge problem with that, and I would suggest it really makes this unusable for most mainstream applications. It's fine if you want to put something on your website that, a chatbot that describes your website, or you want to pull from your website and, have a poorer version of your website for people that call up. But the reality is, if we were using it for real Flagco, and if I'd gone further into that conversation, I would have been asking people to give me their name and address and shipping address and all of that kind of stuff. I'm sending that out to a huge AI cloud provider, and by definition, this stuff needs big providers because the GPUs and their power consumption is huge. And that isn't the direction the world is going in. Shoving chunks of personal data, particularly up to AI providers in the cloud, is going to be problematic. There is a fix for this, and actually, I think a lot of this technology is going to kind of hover around where it is at the moment as sort of breathtaking demos, until the point where these models get to a size that we can run them on sovereign hardware. I think once your model gets down to a point where I can get it inside this, or even get it inside a company with reasonable resources data center, then all of a sudden we're probably going to be able to use GPT in a way that allows us to kind of trust it. By the way, large language models, I'm not talking about OpenAI, the GPT, the OpenAI product, we're probably going to be able to use them in a way that could be quite transformational about what we do. But getting it down into hardware that people control so they control the data flow, I think is going to be crucial. And then there's energy consumption. I mean, the real elephant in the room around this stuff is that while I'm doing demos of putting calls into this agent, the power consumption that is taking to run through the data centers full of GPUs is costing OpenAI over $1 million a day if they were paying for it in cloud costs to run their service, and they're charging, sort of $10 a month for the chat interface. On an economic point of view, you can probably do that. From a sustainability point of view, we spend a lot of time getting the power in data centers down, using ARM CPUs, all sorts of interesting stuff, and then we're just flooding them with GPUs, consuming tons of power. So there are a load of issues around this technology, but I think a lot of them are kind of surmountable. And, particularly the energy consumption, the models are really big at the moment. We can get those models down and fine-tune them using better data that is useful for the context of what we're trying to do. So there are problems. I don't think a takeaway from this talk is run off and implement GPT in your call center. I think that's problematic for a whole bunch of reasons, but there are applications for which it is useful. While we're on problems, I don't want to end on a low note, but I'm gonna do it anyway. There are a lot of negatives around use of AI generally, and I don't know, it's kind of been in the press in the last couple of weeks with the declaration from a group of academics and a group of CEOs of the major AI companies, effectively saying, we have to treat general AI as an existential threat to the human race. And we should control it just like we control nuclear weapons, or we should be prepared to see it as the same sort of risk as nuclear weapons and pandemics. I'm going to come back to that in a second, because personally I don't think that that's anywhere near the biggest risk with this technology. Biggest risk with the technology is population scale, kind of opinion manipulation. AIs and their ability to do micro-targeting is well known, it's well documented, it's well used. The Cambridge Analytica stuff effectively was an example of this. So this isn't a future risk in any way, it's a real risk which is already there, and regulation is way behind it. So by going and saying, we've got to have a presidential task force on whether AI is going to be more dangerous than nuclear weapons, I think actually that's aiming at the wrong target. The right target is people with bad intent will use the technology to generate bad societal outcomes. So, there are three things. There's good people using it to do good stuff, bad people using it to do bad stuff, and good people inadvertently trying to do good stuff and generating bad outcomes. And regulation, or probably actually an arms race of AI, is personally what I think is it's going to be the way that turns out for society. And then, there's this other big thing that is still out there, and it's this sort of idea of occult outcomes, that AI is effectively, just like GPT, is really just autocomplete on acid. A lot of the machine learning data transformation techniques are pattern matching engines, except that the pattern matching going on, because it's going through a neural network, is effectively occult, it's unexplained. And there are the bad outcomes of AI go back almost decades, where data's been used to make decisions about, sentencing and all sorts of stuff like that. And again, the fixes around that, guardrails, exception mechanisms, reversing to explainable data, and monitoring quality. And then the AI will kill us. Actually, I wouldn't mind doing a poll in the room, because you've come to a talk about AI. Who actually thinks that AI taking over as superintelligence and wiping out the human race is a conceivable kind of outcome?
Singularity. Okay. I don't think it's going to take over and wipe people out intentionally. I think somebody might inadvertently put something under the control of AI that shouldn't be. And, I think the chance of there being a fairly catastrophic disaster as a result caused by AI.
Yep.
Because somebody has given AI control of an oil pipeline or a gas works or a nuclear power plant or something like that, rather than it actually deciding to, Terminator style wipe out humanity.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it's more likely is what do we let AI control? If it's taking orders for flags, great. Are we going to let it manage the power plant?
Sorry, that wandered off and became very philosophical. I was just intending to summarize with some general thoughts on AI problems. What I'm going to do now, actually, because we've got about 5 minutes left, and really that's sort of the end of the material that I wanted to cover. I am going to, two things there. That's the GitHub URL for the sample agent that does this stuff, and that's sitting there. Ooh, what's happened there? That's the GitHub URL, and that's the URL for this interface that I've played with today. At the moment, that interface is wide open on the internet because it didn't exist 2 hours ago. Obviously, at some point, the ability to throw up stuff on the end of telephone numbers and use my OpenAI credits will become unsustainable probably about 10 minutes after the live stream gets read out there, so it may go away. I'll leave that up as long as I can get away with it, or until the budget runs out. And then at that point, I'll probably put some registration thing on the front of it. But it's still there. Please feel free to have a bit of fun with it. If someone does... GitHub, it's that FLSA LLM agent. And that React front end is also published there, but it's like 2 days of work that is horrid. So you're much better off with the API. And that's the that's the front end that can be played with. Have a play with it. If someone finds a really, really good use of those prompts, I would really be interested in seeing it and hearing it. I'll buy a round of drinks for the first person to come up with the most evil thing during the course of ComCon. That's it. I'm largely done with what I set off to talk about. Questions?
Hi. Regarding the first prompt that you created with the flags shop, would it even summarize orders that the customer has placed in a way that we could actually use those orders and place them on our website without any human intervention involved in the middle?
Short answer, yes. Let's just... actually, what I will do is... Have we got any other questions in the room? Okay, I'm going to dwell on this question for a short while then, because I'll show you what it actually does if I didn't do something completely stupid with the size of the thing that I ask it to do. So let's do a more normal conversation where I just place an order for a couple of flags. So we're on the 631 number there.
Hello and welcome to Flagco. How may I assist you today?
Can I order 5 UK flags, please?
Of course. Can I confirm that you would like 5 UK flags in the 50 centimeter size and made of nylon material? Also, may I have your name and address for shipping?
Yeah, that would be great. 5 flags, 50 centimeter. My name is Rob Pickering.
Thank you, Rob. May I have your full address, including postcode, for shipping?
Yeah, my full address is 5 The Lock, Belfast, BT12 1AZ.
Thank you, Rob. That's 5 UK flags in the 50 centimeter size made of nylon material to be shipped to 5 The Lock Fast, BT12 1AZ. Your total order cost is £47.49, which includes the cost of the flags, shipping, and VAT. Please note that your order does not qualify for a volume discount. May I have your email address to send you a confirmation of your order?
Yeah, it's rob@pickering.org.
Pickering.com. Your order will be shipped within the next 24 hours and should arrive within 3 to 5 business days. If you have any further questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you for choosing Flagco.
Okay, so my prompt could have been tougher about making it confirm things. And, you know, one of the nice things, actually, if the AI had given me the opportunity, is that you can say things like, no, that's wrong, my email address ends in .org, and it will correctly interpret that. Sadly, it just decided, sorry, you're getting the JSON for the... this is just... So on the end of my prompt, I've got this this bit of thing here that says, once you've collected all the data, just output it as data line. And part of the code behind this sort of pulls that out as JSON and fires that over here. So yes, you can do that kind of thing. Tending to do it text-based here. Again, latest drop of GPT, they've added this thing because they were getting pushed for plugins in order to have external side effects. They've added this sort of function I've not looked at properly yet, but it effectively is the ability to make a call out at the end, so you don't have to mess around with kind of encapsulating in special text format. So yes, you can do that, is the answer to the question. Long answer to a short question.
Well, quick one. The JSON,
Yep.
Is it inventing that schema?
It
is
is
it
in
consistent?
this particular instance, because I wanted to go, hey, look how small this this prompt is.
But you could
I'm
give it
letting it invent the schema. You know, we can give it up to 32K of context, and part of that context that I give it could be.
I'm just thinking that's, you know, yeah, getting creative with the schema and changing the field values.
Oh
occasionally,
yeah,
right?
you wouldn't do that. You know, this is just for a kind of brevity of prompt.
Well, thank you very much, Rob. It was a great presentation. Thank you. And yeah, looking forward to our new overlords. I'm on their side, just so they know.